All right, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome everybody to the God Idea. I think this is week number 7 for us, if you're keeping track. Um, we have uh, gone through a bit of the doctor's opinion, and it's basically the primary purpose of the doctor's opinion in the first 4 chapters is to convince us through our own experiences and through what they have written of 2 things: of what is the problem, step 1, and what is the solution, step 2. That if we're going to follow their examples, um, we're going to be able to find that power. And this is repeated over and over and over throughout the book. And where we are today is on the bottom of, if you have the fourth edition, it's XXVIII. If you're using the study version, which I like to use, it's XXVI. Either way, it's on the second page of the statement, not the second letter, the statement. And it's at the bottom of the page. It's that paragraph that begins with "men and women drink essentially." But before I get to that, let me just review a little bit. One of the points that he's starting to make on this page, and he makes it repeatedly, is the craving is physical. Whenever we see the word craving, it refers to the physiological effect of alcohol on us. So if you're at a meeting and somebody says, "Gee, I've been craving alcohol or a drink all day," eh, no, not really. I mean, I know what you mean, and you know what they know what they mean. But the problem is, they don't really know what they mean in the context of the big book. In the context of this book, the word craving refers to the physical effect of a physical response of the ingestion of alcohol. Up until then, it's all up here. And whenever anyone asks me, how am I so confident? How am I so sure of that? I show them this page and some of the next page, because at the top of this page, it tells us. Um, let's take the first reference. Um, oh, I'm sorry. It's on the next page. So we're going to wait a minute to get to that. Lost my place. Gee, getting old is not easy. Man, everything gets all mixed up sometimes. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'll hold on to that thought, because we're going to pick that up in a minute. So just remember, we're talking about that, about craving in a minute. But the point is that what he has pointed out at the top of this page is that this craving, this manifestation of this allergy, only occurs in a select group of drinkers, that not the typical drinker. They don't have that reaction, that the quote phenomenon of craving is limited to this class. And the word phenomenon is interesting because it means something that's observable but not explainable. The best example I can give you of that today is my cell phone. I could observe it. You could explain it to your purple in the face, but I will never understand how that works. So the same thing existed at that time when it came to the physiological effect of alcohol. Now we know it's not a phenomenon. We know exactly why that happens physiologically, metabolically, why that happens. And maybe if we have some time, I'll get into that before we're done with the doctor's opinion. It just bores the crap out of me when we get into the chemical effects, the acetones and the proteins and all of that nonsense. But that's what we're talking about, that it's no longer a phenomenon, that this occurs only with this group of drinkers and never occurs in the normal drinker. and that this class of drinkers, the alcoholic, can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, is what it tells us on the first paragraph on that page. And I take that very liberally, very broad interpretation, meaning alcohol in any form at all, whether I drink it, swallow it, snort it, smoke it, shoot it, shove it, whatever method I'm using to ingest a mind altering substance is in that category. And if you want to take the strict interpretation, then alcohol in any form, if it's an ingredient in, say, cold medicine you're taking, like NyQuil, it's probably a good idea to avoid that. Things like vanilla extract, probably a good idea to avoid that kind of stuff because it has alcohol in it. So what we're being told is that the best thing we can do is to stay away from it. And he mentions in that top paragraph about the first mentioning about the third part of this condition that isn't usually discussed as much as the other two, and that is the spiritual malady. And he describes it by saying that once have lost our self-confidence, our reliance upon things human, which again is saying the same thing over and over, self-reliance, things human is beyond human aid, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. And he mentions there one of the inadequate, insufficient higher powers, these solutions that we need, this power greater than ourselves, and that is human aid. We're beyond that. In this next paragraph, he mentions another one, frothy emotional appeals, also inadequate, insufficient higher powers. And now let's get down to the bottom paragraph, which is where we really started, should start. Men and women, and I've highlighted this whole paragraph, this last paragraph that begins with men and women. Excuse me. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect. I'm sure I probably speak for most of the people here, but when I found that right mix of chemicals, I became everything I ever wanted to be and wasn't. I was suffered from a spiritual malady, I believe, from a very, very early age. I was never comfortable in my own skin. I was never comfortable in my environment. I was always uh, acting as if and feeling wrong. I watch people do normal things and think, how could they do that? How could they start a conversation with someone they don't know, carry on a conversation with someone they know? How could you even begin to communicate with members of the opposite sex? You ladies scared me to death. I was so tongue-tied in your presence, I couldn't remember my name. But when I found that right mix, I liked the effect it created because it transformed me into a combination of Johnny Carson and Cary Grant all rolled into one. And for you younger people here, I'd probably say Jimmy Fallon and Ryan Gosling all rolled into one. But the point is, it transformed me. I like what it transformed me into. And the word effect, one of the definitions for the word effect is change. I liked the change that it had on me. That's the result. Um, the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. You may want to underline that. They cannot differentiate the truth from the false. It's an early reference to insanity. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Again, now talk about early references. Now we have an early reference to powerlessness. But here's, I think, the most important sentence in this paragraph, because we are now getting into the diagnosis of the real problem I have. The page starts off by talking about the problem I have with alcohol. that it caused me to lose my confidence and so on. But what we're about to hear is about my abnormal reaction to sobriety. The abnormal reaction to alcohol is the manifestation of an allergy, but the manifestation of my real problem is here. When he says they are restless, please underline that. Irritable, please underline that. And discontented, please underline that. You may want to even add after that, and filled with guilt, shame, and remorse. But that describes my abnormal reaction to sobriety. That describes the real problem I have. That is my spiritual malady. So we have this three-part condition made up of a physical allergy and a mental obsession. And it seems like that's what gets talked about all the time. Even I hear people talk about at meetings. We have a two-part condition. We're forgetting the thing that triggers everything is our spiritual malady. We're restless and irritable and discontented. And I don't know about anyone else, but that doesn't even begin to describe what it was like for me. I was like a raw nerve. Everything hurt. I was hypersensitive, overly critical, brutally sarcastic. I was not a pleasant person to be around. And I could eventually convince myself that despite all of the knowledge I have and all of the experience I have about what happens every time I ingest these chemicals, I can eventually convince myself that this time it'll be different. Whatever my plan is, that this time it'll be different. That this spiritual malady convinces me to give in to the mental obsession. For a while, I can push it aside. There are times that I can win that battle, but eventually I will lose that because the obsession is so strong. So it's the physical, it's the spiritual malady that causes us to give in to the to the mental obsession. And once we give into the mental obsession and it's in us and it becomes physical, then the control is all gone. We're off to the races. So it starts not with the mental obsession. It starts with the with the spiritual malady. That's the starting point of our condition. So he says we're restless, irritable, and discontent unless they can again experience. Please highlight and underline this: the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Couple of things on that in that phrase. The word sense, it's not even real. It's a sense of ease and comfort because it's created artificially. It's created by that chemical that we're ingesting. It's not a real sense. So actually, the phrase should be a sense of ease, comfort, and euphoria, because that's what we're really looking for, is that euphoria. But it creates a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by having a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Now, let's get back to where I was a few minutes ago. When people ask me, how do you know? How are you so sure that craving refers to the ingestion of alcohol? That saying, gee, I've been craving a drink all day today, even though I've been sober X number of days, weeks, months, years, is incorrect. Here's one of the first places I point to. It says, and I'm going to suggest you underline this whole sentence and circle the first word, after. After they have succumbed to the desire again. Please highlight desire, and above that, write mental obsession. After we give in to the mental obsession, as so many do, and please highlight and underline the phenomenon of craving develops. There's the allergy. It comes after we give in to the obsession. After we give in, the craving develops. And it's going to be said a few more times on this page alone, but that's the first one. And it's easy to follow. It just says after this happens, this happens. So we can't crave something until we've given into the mental obsession. So they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Resolution. A couple of times we're going to be using that word and another word similar to it, like decision. And there's a difference between those two words. And I think Bill chooses them very carefully. He says a firm resolution not to drink again. What's the difference between a resolution and a decision? A decision implies action. A decision implies action. A resolution does not. A resolution is just a decision to do something and not take any action. A decision is followed by action. So when he says here a resolution, he's saying there's no action that follows it. Not to drink again. This is repeated over and over. Please underline that. This is repeated over and over. And what is it? What is it that's repeated over and over? Periods of unbearable sobriety, followed by periods of unbearable intoxication, followed by periods of unbearable sobriety, followed by periods of unbearable drunkenness, intoxication. That's what we're talking about. That's what's repeated over and over again. We drink until we just can't anymore and we stop. Until we can't stay stopped, because that's the real crux of the problem, is that we cannot stay stopped. And we give in and take that drink, and we drink until we can't take that anymore. And then we stop until we can't stay stopped anymore. And that's what's repeated over and over and over again. And please highlight this: unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's little hope of his recovery. Psychic change. Psychic means it happens in the mind. So he's saying that the key to the solution here lies in a complete change in our thinking. We're going to have a couple of expressions that mean the same thing. Psychic change is one of them. Spiritual experience is another. Spiritual awakening is another one. Moral psychology is another one. They all mean the same thing. A change in personality sufficient to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. Whatever phrase you choose, it comes down to that last one. A change in personality sufficient to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. So let's continue. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, and I'm going to suggest you highlight the rest of this paragraph in pink, because to me, there are promises. Once a psychic change, once again, spiritual experience, change in personality, has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Now, let me go back through that because there's a number of points to make here. He says that he suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire. The desire we're talking about is the obsession. That he's easily able to control that obsession. The only effort necessary, and necessary is another way of saying must, so we can circle that in green because we use green for musts. And here's another must, required to follow a few simple rules, and those simple rules are the steps, not the fellowship alone. So it comes down to how free do you want to be? If you want freedom, the steps will offer it. If you want relief, just going to meetings will offer it. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, which to me is another way of saying frothy emotional appeals. But this one is being made by the patient to the doctor, a frothy emotional appeal. Doctor, I can't go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop. There's a must in green, but I cannot. You must help me. So we're putting the responsibility on the doctor. Again, we're seeking a solution that is human in nature, and we are beyond human aid. It doesn't matter if it's the physician. It doesn't matter if it's the person that we sit next to at meetings. The moment we put our faith in a human being, we're going to fail because we are beyond human aid. That's an inadequate, insufficient higher power. The first one that's mentioned in the book, as a matter of fact. Faced with this problem, if the doctor is honest with himself, and again, remember that a lot of this section, this opinion, is directed to the physicians, not just to the alcoholic or the families of the alcoholic. It's directed to the medical community. And I won't even use the word contemporaries. When he uses the word we doctors, those phrases like we doctors in here, he's referring to his contemporaries, those doctors that are like-minded thinkers to him. Dr. Trotter, we talked about those various doctors in the past, and we can do it again in a moment if you like. But the point is that he's directing this towards the medical community, not his contemporaries. There have been various doctors throughout history that have believed alcoholism was a disease, but they were all by themselves. Rob, let's take a look at, I think it's number 2. Is it number 2? No, I'm sorry. No, it's number 1. Number 1, the disease concept pioneers. There are 4 doctors that I've identified that Dr. Silkworth has identified from time to time as being the people he's talking about. This first doctor, Dr. Trotter, that number 1.
Here we go.
Take your time. That's okay. I'm sorry, Dr. Benjamin Rush. Trotter comes later. Benjamin Rush was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He's the first one. He wrote in when was it? In this 18 in the late 1700s. I'm not sure what the exact date was. He wrote that article that you're looking at there, The Ardent Spirits of the Human Body, and he suggested that alcoholism might be a disease. This is a man, again, signed the Declaration of Independence. He was a physician in the 1700s. And then we have the next page, we have Dr. Thomas Trotter, who was a physician in the early 1800s, who wrote an essay called Essay on Drunkenness, appropriately, where he said habitual alcoholism is a disease of the mind. So he, now in the 1800s, was talking about alcoholism as a disease, a like-minded thinker to Dr. Silkworth. And then we have Dr. Magnus Huss. one of those great names that we've come into in recovery, like Throckmorton. It's just Magnus. When was the last time you ran into somebody named Magnus? It's just wonderful names. But Magnus Huss, in the 1800s, was a Swedish physician who actually coined the phrase alcoholism. In 1849, he started to use that phrase. And he said it refers to the pathological changes in the body due to long-term alcohol intoxication, that it was, quote, a disease of the brain. And he called it alcoholism in 1849. Last but not least is Dr. Albert Lampert. Lampert was a partner with the hospital with
Charlie Towns.
Thank you. Charlie was a partner with Charlie Towns in developing the belladonna treatment. Alexander Lampert and Towns developed this method that they used at the Towns Hospital. It's not easy to get old, man. You forget this shit. But in any case, he had come up with what he thought was a cure for alcoholism. So we have a number of doctors. These are the like-thinking doctors. But what I'm about to read now, we're talking about one of the several things. We can go back, Rob. Several parts of this opinion that are directed at, that are aimed directly at the medical community. And it's one of the reasons why he didn't want his name used, because when he wrote the original article that this was based on, 2 years earlier, the reclamation of the alcoholic in the medical journal in 1937, he got lambasted. He got ripped apart. People accused him of being taken in by these crafty alcoholics. So he didn't want to go through that again. But he included some of the same accusations and pleas in this. And this is one of them. This is one of his pleas. He says, faced with this problem, if the doctor is honest with himself, and then say we're back to doctor's opinion, if he's honest with himself, he must, and there's another must, feel his own inadequacy. Inadequacy is defined in the 1939 dictionary, very much the way it is today. But inadequacy means lack of ability. So how do you think that goes over with the medical community when he says to them, if you're honest, if you look yourself in the mirror, you have to recognize that you have no ability to help these people. Continuing, he says, although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. Please highlight and underline this sentence. One feels that something more than human powers is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Is needed is a must, so it's circled in green. It's another way of saying must. And so is the word essential. Essential is a $20 version of the word must. But what he's saying here, what this revolutionary concept that he took a beating for when he wrote it in the Lancet Journal, he's saying that something greater than human power, like doctors, is needed to produce the essential psychic change. And once again, psychic change, spiritual awakening, spiritual experience cannot be produced by human power. It is spiritual in nature, divine in origin. And then he says, though the aggregate of recoveries, aggregate is just total, though the total of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. That's an admission of their failure. That if they're honest, they have to admit they failed. and I've underlined this last sentence, many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. In other words, self-knowledge is insufficient. So now we have another inadequate, insufficient higher power. We've been introduced already to frothy emotional appeals. We've been introduced to human power. And now we've got another one. So far on 2 pages, we got 2 of the probably 4 that this book mentions. Self-knowledge, knowing the problem is insufficient. If it was sufficient, if it were sufficient, we'd have 1 step. It's all we need, step 1. But it's not sufficient. We need more than self-knowledge. I don't hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. You may want to underline that. And above mental control, I've just written willpower. Because once again, we're talking about human aid, willpower. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal with which to be settled on a certain date favorable to them. And please highlight this whole sentence. They took a drink a day or 2 before prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once become paramount to all other interests, so the important appointment was not met. Let's go back to the beginning of that sentence, because this is another example of how I know that craving sets in after we take the drink. They took a drink. Please underline that. And above that, I've written, gave in to the obsession. If we take a drink, it's because we've given in to the obsession. So we took a drink, we gave into the obsession a day or so prior to the date. And then, please underline, the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount. The physical allergy takes over. So once we give in to the obsession, the physical craving takes over. That's 2 references on the same page. We start the page and end the page. There's going to be a 3rd one on the next page as well. But that's the point. It's all over the place. That is incidentally drinking against his will. Whenever I do this with individuals, I like to ask questions as we go through it. And there, one of the questions I ask, and you may want to write it at the bottom of the page, is, have you ever drank against your will? Because that's what this is describing, is drinking against your will. If you can't stop once you start, that's drinking against your will. You've lost the power of choice to drink, and it has broken them. And again, we have a sobriety problem, not an alcohol problem. Because again, it all started when we were sober and gave in to the obsession. So continuing, please highlight this sentence as well. And we're going to come back through it and do some underlining as well. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are times that I think that's one of the most important sentences in this section of the book, because it's saying that once we start drinking, that we're not drinking to escape. On the previous page, didn't it tell us men and women drink essentially because they like the effect? So on that page, it's saying we drink to escape because we like the effect it creates. We escape ourselves and become everything we ever wanted to be. Johnny Carson and Cary Grant, Jimmy Fallon, and those guys. So he's saying now, once we've started to drink, we're not doing it for effect anymore. We're no longer drinking because we like the effect. Once we start drinking, we're drinking because we cannot control it, because we're drinking to overcome a craving beyond our mental control. we have no ability to control. If it's a craving beyond mental control, it's beyond my willpower. There's your other explanation for physical craving. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause these men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. I want to back up a minute because I wanted to mention this to you before and I kind of got caught up in something else. Rob, if you can give me, please, the last one I sent you, number 33, the AMA review. One of the reasons I keep coming back to why Dr. Silkworth did not want his name used is because of what the medical community thought of his ideas. And what I'm about to read you and show you is a review from the American Medical Association of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And if anyone's interested, I've got a whole stack of reviews from other medical publications that equally condemn the book. But I just figured the AMA is significant enough. And do we have it, Rob? That was in that last one. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to pick up that second paragraph. For many years, the public was beguiled into believing that short courses of enforced abstinence and catharsis in institutes and rest homes would do the trick. And now that the failure of such temporizing has become common knowledge, a considerable number of other forms of quack treatment have sprung up. The book under review is a curious combination of organizing propaganda and religious exhortation. It is in no sense a scientific book, although a letter introduces it from a physician who claims to know some of the anonymous contributors who have been, quote, cured of addiction to alcohol and have joined together in an organization which now would save other addicts by a kind of religious conversion. And let's jump down to the bottom, the last 3 lines of this, Rob, if you would. The one valid thing in the book is the recognition of the seriousness of addiction to alcohol. Other than this, the book has no scientific merit or interest. That's what he's facing. This is what contemporaries at the time thought. And that's what they had to say about the book as well. And again, like if anyone's interested, I have this whole stack of printed reviews from various other places, the Christian Science Monitor, from the Christian Herald, from the Illinois Medical Journal. All of these come to the same conclusion. They are not supportive of this book, except the one in review they have in there from the AA Grapevine. Okay. Where was I? Oh, okay. Let's get back to the classification. These men were not drinking for effect. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice, suicide, rather than continue to fight. One of my mentors, my early mentors, because he's not around anymore, he kind of retired, is a guy by the name of Milt Loring. And if you ever get an opportunity to, on any of the sites that have speaker tapes on it, listen to Milt L. You will be impressed. Milt L from Cleveland. But he tells a story. He came to in a prison cell out of a blackout, which wasn't anything new for Milt. But this time he came out of a blackout and he was facing charges of attempted murder of a police officer. That in a blackout, he had tried to kill a couple of cops. And so he came out of this blackout, and in the cell next to him was a 19-year-old boy who was telling Milt about how many times in the last year or so he wound up in this drunk tank, and how his family is embarrassed that the whole town knows about what goes on with him, and that he has caused such humiliation with his family. He just doesn't know how he could call him up tonight and tell him that it's happened again. And he's going on and on and on. And Milt, who is not in too great a shape, nodded out. And when he came to in the morning, that young man had hung himself in his cell because he couldn't face telling his family that it happened again. And that's what we're talking about here. He made the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight because he saw that it was a losing battle. We're offering a solution. This poor kid didn't know about that. And then Dr. Silkworth starts to classify us. And I'm going to number them as we get through here, and then I'm going to add one to it. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult and in such much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, here's number one, put above psychopaths, the number one, who are emotionally unstable. You may want to underline that. We're all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful, make many resolutions, never a decision. A resolution, once again, is an intention to do something. It is an empty promise. A decision is a judgment, a determination that is followed by action. Exactly as I said before, and he's bringing it up again. And again, they're over remorseful just means they're filled with anguish and guilt, and we all know that. So that's type number one. If you have the study version, in the blank page opposite it, let's number those things. And if you don't have the study version, use the top of the page. You have some blank space up there because we're going to list 5 different types. And this type 1, psychopath. And if you want to define it, a psychopath in the 1939 dictionary is defined as a person with antisocial behaviors who is harmful to the welfare of himself and others. Basically describes us, someone who's harmful to himself and others. We are all psychopaths. Welcome to the party, pal. Continuing, then there is the type of man, type 2, incidentally, who is, let's underline, unwilling to admit he cannot take a drink. Denial. Type 2, denial. Unwilling to admit. That's what denial is. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is the type 3, who believes that, and underline this please, after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. That's type number 3, believes that after a time of sobriety or sobriety, he can drink again. Maybe he was in a rehab. People, I drank on the way home from a rehab. I didn't make it out of a parking lot. I had stuff stashed under my car, my driver's seat of my car. I didn't make it out of the parking lot. After 30 days in treatment, that same day they let go of me, they cut me loose. I didn't get out of the parking lot. That's what we're talking. So we're just being on the wagon, toughing it out. So that's type number 3, that who admits after a period of time he can drink without danger. Then there is type number 4, the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. The manic depressive. Best way I can describe a manic depressive, we couldn't control our emotional natures. Does that sound familiar? That's a manic depressive. Can't control our emotional natures. So far out of these four, I got two real easy. I got manic depressive and I got psychopath. And I could probably squeeze in denial and the other one as well. So far, I've got all four going. Now we have type number 5. This is my favorite. I always thought I was a number 5. Then there are the types entirely normal. Let's underline that in every respect. And let's underline, except in the effect alcohol has on them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. God, I love that one. That sounds like me. Friendly, able, intelligent. Yes, present. Now, this book, so we have the fifth types. We have five types here. Type 1, psychopath. Type 2, unwilling to admit, in denial. Type 3, believes after a time he can drink again. 4, the manic depressive, can't control his emotional natures. And 5, entirely normal except when drinking. When this was originally written, there was a 6th type. If you have the study version, in the back of the book, there are the gray pages, which are the original pages of this, or if you have a copy of the original manuscript, you'll find it. But if you turn to, in the doctor's opinion, at the back of this book, it's on page 3. In the gray pages, the last 2 lines, this is what it says. And this is the 6th type that was removed from the book. Then there are those who are never properly adjusted to life, who are the so-called neurotics. The prognosis of this type is unfavorable. Neurotics are defined as emotionally, mentally disturbed, exhibiting anxieties, phobias, and abnormal behaviors. In the book that started it all, you know, that big book, there's a statement in that suggests that the reason why this was taken out was twofold. One, they said it lacked a message of hope. And 2, that neurotic description could apply to a large portion of any population, that it's not restricted to just alcoholics. Any group of people, neurotic. There are a lot of us, a lot of them. But that's the reason why that was removed. Take it for what it's worth. That's what the person who wrote that, I think Ken might have written that, had to say about it. But that's the 6th type. 6 categories. We got 6 types. Let's continue. Let's go back to where we were in the doctor's opinion. And let's highlight this whole paragraph, the one that says all these and many others. All these and many others have one symptom in common. Please underline that. Have one symptom in common. They, please underline this, cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. Once again, craving comes after drinking. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. The phenomenon of, we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy. We can't control our drinking when we're drinking because of, anyone ever try to do that incidentally? Try to control your drinking while drinking? Doesn't work very well because of the physical craving. But continuing, As a manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never, and I've underlined never, been by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated, means permanently removed, completely removed. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Please underline that. There's no compromise there. There's no middle ground there. Entire abstinence. It's like there's no such thing as being a little abstinent. It's like being a little pregnant. Either you are or you're not. Like being dead. You either are or you're not, one way or the other. But what I think he's saying here in this paragraph, in all seriousness, I think what he means is this. If everyone here, we have 20, 30, some odd, we had 30, we got 22 people here now. If everybody here started drinking right now, it would have different effects on every one of us. Some would be up dancing. Some would be, starting fights. Some would be on the make, hitting on any female or male that they may be attracted to. Some guaranteed would be up on the bar telling jokes and entertaining people. There'd be a few others. There'd definitely be a few characters starting fights. And then there'd be the guys in the corner like me who are just kind of nursing that drink and getting another one. And all I'm doing is putting down and criticizing and being sarcastic about everybody and everything around me. So we may all exhibit different behaviors, but we all, every one of us, do one thing the same. We all go looking for the next drink. Behavior is not what it's about. We exhibit different behaviors, but the one thing that we always go after is more. I always drank with the expectation of arriving where I wanted to be. If I only had a little bit more, and it was always about a little bit more. The promised land was always just a few hits away. And you had to drink through that initial resistance, whether you think I'm getting sick or I got to drive or any of that silliness. You got to drink through that shit to get to the promised land. But that's the point he's trying to make here, I believe, is we exhibit different behaviors, but one is the same. We all go drink looking for that next drink. And I'm going to wrap it up on that point because we're pretty much out of time. We'll continue this. Oh, no. No, I'm going to do one more paragraph. I got to do this one. Sorry. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate, meaning we rush into it. Looking at people's different behaviors makes us rush into a different debate here. Much has been written pro and con, but please underline this. Among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. Let me repeat that. Among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. And I'm going to add something right after that. But we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. How do you like them apples? That's why I had to read that. I can't leave that hanging. The medical community says we're doomed, but we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered. How do you like them apples? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.